wow, after all of that hype, all of that publicity, all of that setup, where's Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4? Where is it? Toby Fox announces out of nowhere during the highly anticipated Switch 2 reveal event that, yeah, Deltarune is going to be a day one release on Nintendo Switch 2. Everyone watched that trailer and then went out and bought Welcome Tour instead. That is what happened with Deltarune. Toby Fox spent years, worming his way into Nintendo, living in Japan, schmoozing with all these people, desperately trying to get noticed and talked about, trying in vain to become Japanese. And all that happens is that he put out Deltarune on Nintendo Switch 2 and not a single person cares. Deltarune was not talked about. It was not addressed. It was not brought up. It was not played. Okay? Not a single person cared at all about Delta 3 and 4 being released because everyone played Deltarune Chapter 1 and 2, or Undertale in my case, and saw that, it was lazy, unfinished slop, so they were just like, okay, I'll just wait for the finished product, And this is what happens with every single episodic release ever. This is what's happening with Final Fantasy VII. This is what's happening with, Life is Strange. This is what's happening with, every other, example of this you can name. Nobody is patient enough to wait years for a video game to be finished in this episodic format. Toby, really underestimated the market for this stuff. I understand why he did it, because he knew that Undertale was, only relevant for, a week. He knew that he had to, hit that iron while it was hot. By making it an episodic release, he tried to drag, the hype cycle for Undertale through the decade, okay? Because, immediately after Undertale came out, Deltarune's coming out. It's Toby Fox's dream project. It's gonna be so much bigger and better with a bigger budget, and, it's absolutely nothing of value. Absolutely nothing, of value. To the point where, I don't know a single person who, has played Deltarune at all. And as of today, Deltarune is permanently off the Nintendo Switch 2 bestsellers list. It's never going to catch up. It's never going to be relevant again. Toby Fox slashed the price of Undertale trying to get that noticed and talked about. That's not going to work. This is another example of just, how the extremely, toxic, woke, just online gaming community cannot prop up a game into relevancy, right? Because Undertale was absolutely the most talked about indie game of the decade, but that curiously does not translate to the most successful, because Hollow Knight was bigger, Minecraft is an enduring phenomenon. You have so many, Stardew Valley was bigger, even though that was a plagiarized from Harvest Moon. Undertale was hyped up as being this huge cultural phenomenon from the West, our equivalent to the Mother games, and nobody really cares, people can prop up Toby Fox as an icon all they want. It's gonna end the same way that the Celeste guys ended, right? The same way that the Disco Elysium guys ended, with a wet fart. Because when you get right down to it, Toby Fox is not some innovator. He is not some creative savant. He is not some amazing game dev. He is someone who has a strong following online for political reasons, because he is cut from the same cloth as the terminally online left, right? Woke culture, just online all the time, spurging out about political issues, gets PTSD from answering phone calls, those guys, okay? Toby Fox's fan base are just the kind of people who spend their entire lives socializing online. In a lot of ways, their entire identity revolves around like preserving Toby Fox's reputation, which is why so many of them have stuck with it, even as the Toby Fox and his games have faded into irrelevancy. Like I predicted 10 years ago that Undertale would not be relevant, in a decade, and that prediction has held very true because there is no huge influx of fans. There is no like huge Undertale following. People don't get fired up whenever Toby Fox's name is attached to some project, right? And nobody got excited about Deltarune. Like that's just the long and short of it. Is that like this game is going to die with its millennial audience, and that's just the long and short of it. Is that this is a game that was worshipped by people who don't play video games, who don't know anything about them, who have contempt for them in a lot of cases. Um, I've heard Undertale being described as like the worst thing to ever happen to indie games, and honestly, I can't say I disagree. Can't say that I do, and I'm very happy to see like other titles from smaller developers like clearly eclipse Deltarune in relevancy. Split Fiction is doing better than it. Um, Hogwarts Legacy is doing better. Like there's just so many examples of like games on the Nintendo Switch 2 that are just like bangers and are just like titles that like we really should celebrate and acknowledge as being great games. If only to acknowledge just how Toby Fox has just failed to leave much of an impression on anybody. This is a guy whose big claim to fame is that he took Megalomania, the boss theme from Live Alive, and turned it into Megalovania, and suddenly he's this genius composer. Okay, like you're talking about someone who just like plagiarizes obscure 90s RPGs and tries to pass them off as his own work. That's Toby Fox, like that's the community is just hyping this fraudster up as some like indie game dev auteur when like he spent the past decade with his thumb up his ass, trying to make Megalovania into a meme, trying to like keep Undertale relevant in any way he can, with despite not being able to produce like new content. Toby Fox is a really good example of what's going to happen to every single like indie game that gets like any kind of prominence or success at all or attention at all. Like eventually they are going to fall off, they are going to become irrelevant, and they are no longer going to produce new video games. And this is why Nintendo will always be superior.